West Shore RCMP investigating several reports of a violent online group exploiting children and youth. To learn more about this, Corporal Nancy Saggar from the West Shore RCMP joining us on the phone. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
This is always, whenever you hear these things happening locally, it's always a little rattling. And we've been learning that, as your investigation has shown, there's a couple of groups. I don't know much about these groups, but groups called things like 764. There's something called the Calm. These big virtual communities that apparently are, preying on and victimizing minors. And you've been discovering that this has been striking close to home. So maybe talk to us about what's happened here.
Right. So right now we have 3 open investigations involving a violent online crime group that's exploiting children and youth in the West Shore. And you're right when you say it's the 764. That's what's been particularly named in our investigations as being the online group that's targeted the children in these investigations. But 764 is actually a part of a larger online network known as the CALM, which is short for the community. And what the CALM is they deliberately target, victimize, and recruit vulnerable children between the ages of 8 and 17. They're a virtual community, and it's made up of groups of individuals globally who conduct illicit activities that glorify serious violence and cruelty, gore, especially against children.
And when you're talking about recruiting, what are they getting recruited into?
To produce violent content of either children harming themselves, harming other children. And, we've talked about sextortion in the past, I think, on your show in terms of what it looks like for an adult to be extorted sexually online. However, with children, it's not about the money. This group is not after money. What they're after is more content. They're after children making content of themselves, harming themselves, and then using that content against the child to then manipulate them and get them to create even more. So it's extremely malicious, things that are happening here online. And it's taking place on online media platforms like Discord, Telegram, Roblox, Minecraft, Twitch. And, if you're a parent who's listening and this is any one of the programs here or the apps that I've described or something that your child is on, you really need to pay close attention to exactly who they're talking to on those platforms.
And how did these cases locally come about? Was it parents cluing in, or did you intercept it as police, or where? I know there's going to be stuff we can't share because we're talking about minors here, but what can you let us know about how these cases emerged?
It was a variety, actually. So it was a combination between an agency called NECMEC, which is basically, they're based out of the States, and we partner with them when it comes to online extortion of children, whether that be, the sexual extortion that's happening or other forms of harm that are happening online. And so we get notified by them. They act as an agency that will reach out to whatever police of jurisdiction the materials are either being sent to or from. And then you start a police investigation from there. So that's where some of the reports came from, and we did have a parent as well come forward.
And with again, I know can't get into specifics, but I'm just kind of curious from the parent side, how did this individual, or just maybe in general, how could you start to notice that this stuff is happening? What signs should you watch out for?
Yeah, so I'm not going to speak to specific cases. Again, we're going to protect, the victims here as much as possible. But if you're a parent and you're wondering, okay, how do I go about figuring out if something like this is happening online with my child? So there's several things that you can do, and there's going to be some warning signs, right? So I think number one, pay attention to what program your child is or app they're using online. If you notice that they somehow have, a new online friend, they seem suddenly infatuated with somebody, or they maybe seem scared of someone online. Maybe your child's receiving anonymous gifts being delivered to your home. That could include currency, gaming currency, even online, or other virtual items. If they're suddenly receiving these items, there's that old adage that nothing's ever free, right? And so that's something you need to pay attention to. if they're demonstrating an interest, if your child's demonstrating an interest or an affinity to consuming gory content, they're interested in things like self-harm, occultism, that sort of thing. Like those are things that you need to start paying attention to and having open, non-judgmental conversations with them. I mean, I can't stress that enough. The quickest way to get a child to really close off and not tell you anything is to really judge them for it. So if you open yourself up as a parent and say, like, I'm here to listen, I'm not here to judge, you'll get way more information out of your child. And if you also notice things like, there's one of the things that this group has encouraged children to do is to write in blood or what appears to be blood. So if you're noticing that in the bedroom or on the carpet, that sort of thing, you need to start asking more questions and paying more attention. Now, if your child is online and they're interacting and playing these games, move that gaming system or your computer or whatever it is to a location in the house where you can keep an eye on them. Having them, tucked away in their room while they're on these platforms is not a good idea. Also, very frequently check the messages in these games. This is all, monitoring well within your parental rights to really figure out and monitor what's happening with your child online. Literally read the messages because it's very clear what you'll discover in there.
Now, I'm out of time, but one last question. So we've talked about you got these 3 cases open, looking into the exploitation of children and youth involved in these groups. You've mentioned the 764, this thing called the COM, this big global online community trying to encourage these young people to do these things. Where could your investigation go, given that these are massive online communities with people who knows where in the world? Like, what are the chances of you actually being able to, bring anybody to justice for this stuff?
Yeah, like I'm not going to say that this is an easy investigation. It's not. It's got its challenges, especially when it involves, virtual crime, things that are happening over the internet, and like you said, could be happening from anywhere. Right? We're in the very beginning stages of these investigations, so I won't comment on what the chances are. I'm going to tell you that we have very dedicated police officers that are working very hard on this. And our goal is to see that justice happens here. We want to get the suspect. I mean, there's no greater victim than a vulnerable child, and so we're working diligently towards figuring out who that is.
Corporal Nancy Saggar, West Shore RCMP. Some important things to think about. This has happened. You've been investigating this locally. This is not just some theoretical thing. This can happen right here at home, and things to think about to protect your family. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, we got to take a break. 8 o'clock news is next.